Cesar Aguilar. Welcome to the 525 Records podcast. How you doing today?
Great, man. Thanks for having me.
You're in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
I am up in Portland, Oregon. We're doing this long distance, and I thought a good thing to launch into is your thoughts, being a longtime Austinite, on the Los Angeles exodus of famous people swarming into Austin, Texas. What are your thoughts on that?
That's funny, man. My thoughts on this is that, it was already kind of this urban myth in Austin that all these Californians were moving here. And although I think that there has been quite a few, it seems like a lot of people, Texas is so huge, man, that people from Dallas and Houston move here quite often. I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know if I have really any thoughts on it outside of sometimes I welcome it because I'm like, well, maybe it'll bring in some new blood and some new ideas.
It's one thing to move from Dallas to Austin, or coming from San Antonio. It's a Texas to Texas move. And as much as it varies within city to city, it's still in Texas, But when you have all these LA hipsters moving to Austin just in record droves, I'm just wondering if there's have you noticed a visual change on the streets of Austin, in the last month or two?
That's a good question, man. I actually have noticed that's what I was about to say. So Austin continues to try to be this, this college town, but it's got like international, national acclaim, and there's a lot of people that want to move here because we make these damn headlines about great place to live, reasonably affordable. And like I was saying, even though I welcome, innovation and cool ideas, we don't really have the infrastructure for it, man. So it makes up for like a lot of congestion. We got a pretty, not to get, dreary here, but, a pretty, significant homeless problem that's happening. So I think, man, this is like a lot of major cities in the country right now,
I've heard the Wash is in downtown. I've only been to Austin a couple of times, but I think right around 6th Street, there's this Wash, right? And that's it's the main area of homeless in Austin.
Yeah, exactly. And then, living in a pandemic has just created all kinds of just weirdness, man. Let's just leave it at that. It's got there's like this, weirdness going on in the city, and I got a lot of people camping out, and it's just this like living in this. It's kind of, it gives you this mixed response, right? Because I love, Austin's my home. I've been here for several years, right? And I love the city, and so I want to be a part of something, part of doing something about it. But you kind of feel a little bit helpless because you can't,
When did you move to Austin?
I got here in '95. I came to school here. I came to the University of Texas. And pretty much I've been here for on and off, I guess it would be 25 years now. There was a little stint where I, moved back home for about 3 years, which is, down on the border, Rio Grande Valley. But pretty much, 20 plus years here in Austin.
And you went to UT. What were you majoring in?
I came here to study. I got a degree in English. Avid reader. I've always kind of been fascinated with writing. I had some good teachers back in high school that they saw in me things that I, didn't see in myself. And they were like, you have a knack for at least communicating things that are, kind of from the heart, is the kind of stuff that they would tell me. And, I that's what I've done for a long time, man. It's just, I've always been a journaler or somebody that has written a lot of stuff for many, many years, man. I've been toting a bunch of old journals around for, 2 decades.
It's all making sense to me now. Oh, your incredible lyric writing. Cesar Aguilar, frontman for the Austin, Texas band Haunted Amps. They've been broken up for a while now, but one of the most important records of the last 10 years, I would say, in terms of underground awesome indie rock. You call it ghost rock on Twitter. I don't know. How do you feel about that moniker now? Is it still pretty accurate?
Yeah. I think I was toying around with a few different ideas of what I felt about the music. I was trying to make a point that the music was very involved in being in the present moment. That's what I was trying to communicate. And the ghost rock stuff, it was just this idea of being connected to like two worlds at once. Another like an other world, like a spirit world, and then being here at the same time and toggling those two worlds.
Haunted Amps is such a great band name, Haunted Amps. I'm just wondering who came up with that. Is that of your creation or was it a group thing?
So there was this one time when I was listening to an old John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I love a lot of his solo stuff. And there was some old videos when he was really down on his luck, man, like really strung out on drugs. And he talked about hearing ghosts, like, coming out of his amplifiers. And I could relate to that. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, it's a fascinating idea. And so I had this band that I'd started, and I always knew I wanted to base the band off of that idea. And the first band, me trying to come up with this idea of, basically ghosts emanating from the sound, from the speakers. The first iteration I had was this duo I had here in Austin called Spectre in the Cab. And it was this, like ghost coming out of your guitar cabinet.
And that was the precursor to the Haunted Amps project, which would develop out of Spectre in the Cab.
That's right. So basically, yeah, I was like, okay, this makes sense to me, the whole Spectre in the Cab. It's like, but a lot of people, it might not make sense to. They might think it's like a literal somebody, like a ghost getting out of a taxi. And so I wanted to communicate the idea more clearly. And then one day it just hit me that, Haunted Amps did that. And I liked the way it rolled off the tongue. And I felt like it really communicated the style of music that I wanted to make.
I've never seen a name match a record or a band, better. And I think I know those John Frusciante videos you're talking about. It was in the depths of his heroin addiction. He was selling all his guitars. He's living in some crappy studio apartment in some part of LA, and he just looks horrible. And,
those are the ones, man. Yeah.
But yeah, those videos, man, I mean, this is the thing about the 90s. You do things on film back then. Nobody's ever going to see it. It'll languish away on some VHS tape. And then here we are. I mean, the most obscure, craziest home recordings are now resurfacing to live forever online. And this is the age that we are in.
Yeah. And I'm actually grateful. I'm grateful for that because I'm sure there's some other people that aren't so grateful, that have maybe made some miscalculations about getting stuff recorded that they would otherwise not want, circulating out there. But you seeing those videos, I don't know, man. I mean, I can relate, having gone through my own struggles with, going into darkness. So, at that time, that's kind of what I gravitated to, man. I just, seeing him like beat down like that, I could relate to that. And, that idea just stuck with me.
Well, yeah, you're not alone. If you do a quick Google search for Haunted Amps, you get a ton of these stories of literally haunted amps. The amp did this and it acted weird, and there's all these ghost stories of amps, and you think amps and guitars, they're so deeply personal. Somebody spends their whole life with a guitar and then they die, or it moves on to a new owner, and it like retains that essence of the former owner, to a large degree. It seems to me, I don't know, call me crazy, but
no. I think that, and that's awesome that you did that search, because, that's what I think is fascinating about about the name, right, is that, if you go down that rabbit hole, and there's not a lot of stuff out there, but it's just a cool idea that people will look this kind of stuff up online, or they'll record some stuff where they're like, oh dude, my amp did this. So what I'm trying to communicate here, I guess, is that this idea of, with sound, you can go out there, you can go to like a frontier that nobody has ever been to, musically or sonically speaking, and really tap into something, man. And you don't know how you got there, and it could be of this world, but you could also, somebody could say, man, like he tapped into something and it really feels like it is otherworldly. And that's really what I'm trying to like communicate about this whole idea with, the name Haunted Amps, I guess.
Sound, light, vibration, matter, density. It's all kind of the same thing, I mean, sound requires air to travel. You can't have sound without air, and it fits all together in a beautiful little puzzle.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm glad you say that. I think so. I think that music is it's just been a big part of my life, man. It's real sacred to me, and I think that we don't fully know everything that's going on with it, and but we know that it can make us feel really good. You know what I mean? It can transport us to a memory at the, like a key on a piano strikes, and you can be transported to a memory based off of song. So there's just a lot of mystical stuff going on, is the way I like to believe.
And I mean, for thousands of years, the Catholic Church banned a series of notes, and it's basically, if you ever hear the Black Sabbath, their very first song, it's, Black Sabbath, dun, dun, dun. That particular interval was banned by the church because they deemed it to be evil, so you can never play those three notes in that interval.
That sounds like an interval that I want to play.
Well, I mean, who's to judge?
Yeah.
My guest today on the podcast, you're listening to Cesar Aguilar, frontman for a band out of Austin, Texas called Haunted Amps. We should listen to a little more of the record in chronological order.
Saboteur, but you just can't see all the things that you do, everything that you are. It's the dark passenger that rides aboard. Won't be satisfied until it's through. He orchestrates the end of you. Saboteur, and you're lost at sea, but you're hoping you'll go far, but you can't navigate the stars. It's the dark passenger, he cries, man overboard. All he knows, disloyalty is all he shows.
if we can just geek out a little bit on that song, because that slide track kills me. It's amazing, but I've never really found out what kind of guitar were you playing on that.
So we recorded this at a studio in Austin, and there was some guitars available to us there. To my knowledge, the record was recorded on either a Stratocaster or a Fender Mustang that was in the studio. That's what I chose for the record. And I think it was the studio owner / engineer. I think I might have been playing through a Strat. That might have been his.
It's hard to talk about how awesome this record is if you've never heard it. So I think we should listen to one more song. This is, and it's something that we should mention is that this album was concocted in a very specific order. You had a very strong intention as to how the tracks were laid out. And as far as I've heard, rumor on the street is you had it pretty much completed before you even had the band together. Is that even close to accurate?
But both are true. Both are true in that. Yeah, I mean, it to me, I still believe wholeheartedly this was a very conceptual record, just because, of the experience I went through writing it, and as far as I recall, because I was on the verge, not on the verge, I was going through another disintegration. My first disintegration of a band, and that was, Spectre and the Cab had disintegrated. But basically I had to, put a band together and find a drummer and, but the record, yeah, definitely.
Much like a Kubrick movie where he's got it all in his head before he even pulls the camera out. The shot selection, the order, it means everything. A lot of bands don't do that. It's kind of, they just wing it. They go in, we'll put the song here. Maybe change them up a little bit, but not on this record. This is very...
No, for sure. No, not...
If I'm hoping this is accurate also, it was at Shine Studios. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
The great Justin Douglas was the engineer on this.
Yeah. Justin Douglas, he's a local musician / engineer. And I think his studio is called something else now. The name escapes me, but it was Shine then, and it's called King Electric Studios now, or something to that effect.
So it was Shine, now King Electric Studios. The great Justin Douglas engineered this Haunted Amps record from 2010. Cesar Aguilar is the frontman for the Haunted Amps. He's the guest on the podcast today. This song is my absolute favorite on the record, and it's called Hurricane.
destroyed your house. It's in shambles now. And why would you leave the place that you call home? Why shouldn't have to roll when Mother Nature's wrong? Mother Nature's wrong. Building stone by stone. Mother Nature's wrong. Building stone by stone. It's a wave, a wave, a wave, and it's risen above the wall. It's a wave, a wave, a wave, and it's risen above the wall. It's a wave, a wave, a wave, and it's risen above the wall. It's a wave, a wave, a wave, and it's risen above the wall. When the hurricane swept into town, it destroyed your life. It's in shambles now. And why would you leave the place that you call home? One shouldn't have to roll when Mother Nature's wrong. Mother Nature's wrong. Building stone by stone. 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 It's a wave, a wave, a wave, and it's risen above the wall. It's a wave, a wave, a wave, and it's risen above the wall. It's a wave, a wave, a wave, and it's risen above the wall. It's a wave, a wave, a wave, and it's risen above the wall. Eye of the hurricane.
Just some absolutely brilliant guitar work. That intro, man, I got to know all about that intro, how it came about, how many guitar tracks are on there. And you're the only guitar player on this record. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And that intro consists of feedback, some crazy, like really high octave slide stuff where you get those crazy notes, in addition to just kind of a regular guitar track. And then, of course, those spring reverb explosions. And, it's one of those things that you could probably do it all on one track. But what is your, I know it's been a few years, but what is your recollection of that intro?
So basically what the concept there was this idea of this impending doom, kind of, the way hurricanes do, right? Like you hear that, hurricane is forming in the middle of the Atlantic, gaining force, right? It's, it's picking up with, on wind speed. And, it's just this ominous kind of situation. And what I had communicated, and I heard this in my head, and I had communicated to certainly the guys when we were, practicing this song and forming the idea that, it had to feel that way. It had to feel like this catastrophic event that was about to make landfall. There was a few overdubs. And one thing that, there was like a space echo pedal, it was not like the old, like tape delay space echo. It was like some new thing that Roland had, recently put out or something. The first thing was to create that undulating sound. And after going through a few different effects ideas with Justin, I was like, okay, this sounds like it, because we were able to basically, if I recall correctly, the way this pedal worked, I was able to remember all of this was recorded live, right? Like this was not like After Effects production. And so with the way this particular pedal worked, I was able to depress the pedal, and every time I would, let a chord ring out, I could press that pedal and extend the delay, and it would give me these varying speeds of undulation. And so that was doing it for me in terms of like this sounds like something that is festering, something that is brewing. And then he had some like this knockoff pedal of some sort that was just like this little no-name boutique pedal that didn't have, like, it literally was nondescript. And when I press down on that, it's what gives you those really high-end frequencies, and which to me at the time, that felt like, like lightning striking, and thunder booming. And these are all things that I wanted to hear. And then the third overdub was me just like really taking the pick to the strings and just like feverishly strumming like at an alarming rate. That's where you hear all that like high end there towards the end when Seth has that awesome bass line. But all that like just really high frequency stuff was me just kind of feverishly strumming away at the guitar, and that to me like was really sounding like right before the hurricane makes landfall.
And this is all from a 3-piece rock band, which is recording live in the studio, a minimal amount of overdubs. Seth Gibson is the bass player. Justin Sweat, is that the right way to say his name? I was butchered.
It looks like Sweat, but he pronounced it. I believe he pronounced it Sweat, and so we pronounce it Sweat as well.
Justin Sweat, fantastic on the drums. Seth Gibson, absolutely above and beyond his pay grade on the bass guitar. And it all came together into this magical moment onto 2-inch tape in Austin, Texas in the summer of 2010. That intro, it's rare that a song just makes your jaw kind of hang open. And then, you're just like, what the hell? How is this even possible? It's not your average song. Just knowing what I know about this record, you guys didn't spend, 2 months in the studio trying to get perfect guitar takes and overdubs. This was a quick in, quick out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how long did the whole recording take?
Well, going back to what you referenced first, and then I'll answer the second part of what you just said here, or what you just asked. Like, I do believe that, there was a lot of magical stuff that happened, man. Like that, listening to Hurricane, even as you played it now, it's like that we were able to get those sounds. I think it's a testament to the people that were in the room, meaning that there was just this like confluence of, people that had something to offer musically, and all that energy was focused. And, that's what came out. That's really what's a part of us, myself, Seth and Swight. And so we just kind of gelled together, and that's the end product. And there's like, it's like, people's innermost being expressed. And I think it really, I think it was, captured well, or at least expressed well is what I'm trying to say. We didn't have a lot of money as a group. I had recorded a Spectre in the Cab record with Justin Pryor. That's how I knew him, because he had helped us record a little 5-song EP called 5 Purple Songs. And so I was like, well, what he recorded sounded really good to me on Spectre. And, I had loyalty to him because he was a good friend and had heard us out. And so I was like, let's go back to the guy that was able to help me record our first album. To answer your question, we knocked this out, and we knocked out, 8 songs on the record, 8 songs in 2 days. One day we went in and tracked all the instrumentation, and the next day we tracked all the vocals and any other overdubs that came to me sound wise that I felt needed to go in the song to fill them out.
2 days to track one of the most incredible records, and the guitar work is so incredible and so brilliant. When Seth told me, Seth Gibson, the bass player, that you were a new guitar player, that you had just learned guitar prior to this record, that blew me away even more. I mean, what do you think? Was it a year or maybe 2 you'd been playing guitar when you guys went in to do this record?
Well, to be fair, I've always wanted to play guitar, right? But I was just I never took lessons. I was always kind of lazy about it. I'd maybe learned some major chords like from 2000 to 2005, and I was already starting to strum and write, real basic songs, 3-chord songs and stuff like that. And then right around 2005, there was like some major events that happened in my life. I had a friend that passed away. Well, it was kind of a weird story, but he essentially had a heart attack in my arms and was resuscitated and got to live a few years after that. He had like a major stroke and a heart attack, and he had a heart transplant and got to live a few years. He's now passed. But that was a catalyzing event for me in that, I started to see how impermanent we are. And what was I going to do with my time here? I've always been drawn to the arts, and I didn't want to squander any more time not trying to do something with the arts. And I've always been an avid music lover, and I wanted to do something musically. And so I would say, 2000, probably from about 2007 on is when I just started buckling down and breaking my hand down and making it do what I needed it to do. Hold down chords and learn one lead pattern and just keep on repeating that over and over and over till I could, come across as somebody that somewhat knew their way around a guitar.
Oh, dude, you hit it right on the head there, because the rest of us pick it up as teenagers and we idolize rock bands and we practice solos and try to mimic and mirror. But your style, why it resonates as so incredible and true is that it's so out of the box. It's so beautifully abstract that you couldn't try to play that if you wanted to, and so now you have this, you've transcended guitar. You've become this original thing, that nobody else can do, nobody else can really even mimic. And this is why, these are always the best records, are always the ones done in the shortest amount of time. And you have, when you first start playing guitar and writing music, most people I think would say that you have this sort of creative fire that when you're new to the instrument, everything comes out all at once, and it just all it's amazing. It's always amazing to me when you have guitar players that think outside of the instrument, and the instrument is just a pure vehicle. It's not even really relevant to what's happening. It's just sort of happens to be the vehicle that the music is coming through.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. I think that has been my approach. I can be stubbornly like an individualist. Like I don't want to take lessons. You know what I mean? I didn't want to learn other people's songs, and people could construe that as like, dude, you're just being lazy. You know what I mean? Like everybody learns other people's songs, and I still to this day don't know a lot of covers, because I didn't want somebody else's style to taint the way that I wrote. And people might not believe that, but that was a deliberate choice. I do sometimes think that could have hurt me, because I could have probably learned, structures that I could have used for my own songwriting. But yeah, it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's just, that was my approach to it. And I think there's a little bit of credence to what you say, in that, the way I approach the guitar, like I'll look at a chord chart and I'll just kind of pick different chords that are illustrated, and I listen for the ones that strike me emotionally as, wow, this is really dissonant and a bizarre chord, and it's got a real weird shape for my hand. And that's what I'm drawn to, is like, does it have a weird shape? And does it do something to me emotionally? Because if it has a weird shape, it's going to train my hand to do something that my hand's not used to doing. I find that those things help me gain more facility, if you will, like with playing.
What was your friend's name that he had a heart attack in?
Yeah, his name was Chasen Llewellyn, and he was a fellow partier. We partied together, we worked together, and we were both like walking around, romanticizing like Bukowski and just being drunks and poets. He was a poet.
Bukowski, one of my all-time favorites. And so you guys are just walking around Austin?
No, it wasn't even like that. So basically, one day, me and my gal, we're driving around the city. We're fixing to go do something, enjoy our Sunday, and I get a phone call. From Chasen, and I pick up my phone. I see he's calling, and I could have easily have declined to answer the phone. You know what I mean? Because I'm with my girl, and we're like about to do something. And if I recall correctly, she kind of gave me the eyes of like, "Hey, we're in the middle of something. Like no hanging out with Chasen today."
Oh, I know that look.
Yeah, and. But I was like, man, I got to answer this. And I answered it. And on the other line, I mean, I just hear a person that is, what's the word I'm looking for here? In distress. And he's like, man, Cesar, something's happening. You got to come, man. You got to come to my house. Help me, And I communicated that to my girl. We did a U-turn, got back on the highway, got back on I-35, which is the main highway here in the city. And I was all the way in South Austin. He lives in like North Central Austin. And I just hightailed it. And before I even got there, he called me a second time and was like, he's like, "Hey man, where are you? I could sense the situation was urgent." He's like, "Where are you, man? I need you here." Anyway, long story short, we finally arrived. We walked up the stairs. He's sitting outside of his apartment. He's on the second floor. He's sitting out on the landing. And, I can see that his skin is turning purple as I walk towards him. And then the minute I got there, he, literally collapsed. And I had to like squat down to ensure that he didn't bang his head on the concrete because he just turned, like a sack of potatoes. And, we were frantic, because he went into cardiac arrest essentially. And we called an ambulance. They took like what seemed like an eternity to arrive. And then they showed up and began the whole CPR process. And, took probably what seemed like, I think it was anywhere from 7 to 15 minutes to get a heartbeat again. So he had essentially died, and they brought him back.
And how old was he?
At the time, let's see, I would have been roughly around 27. He was maybe 4 years older than me. So it was like 31, 32.
Just crazy young to be having a heart attack.
Yeah, dude. Definitely, man. That's what was the stunner. And dude, that was a very traumatic experience,
Yeah. I mean, it's, if that doesn't change you, maybe you have bigger problems. I mean, that would change anybody. I mean, your best friend has a heart attack right in front of you. I mean, dude,
well, dude, it would certainly inform what was going to happen moving forward from an artistic standpoint. That's when I started to feel like I was coming in real close contact with this question of why are we here? What are we going to do with it? And, mortality, like death waits for nobody.
So he survives the heart attack. He's on a short list for a transplant. He winds up getting a transplant at some point and living for a few more years.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened. He was reluctant to do it. He didn't want to do it. He, finally heard his mother out and heard a lot of people that loved him out, and, went through it. And I think he got to live another solid 3 years. He did, in retrospect, he certainly complained about it because of, it's not like you just go back to a normal life. You're heavily medicated and, under a watchful eye. And so your life becomes, a lot of doctors visits, a lot of medicine. And, I know that he was appreciative, but I also sense that, it was a burden as well,
I mean, I can't imagine being in that position, but I mean, did he ever share with you his near-death experience?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. In fact, not only that, but, I remember getting a phone call from him one day and him telling me that he had this crazy dream where basically he remembered, I don't remember the details, but he had this crazy dream. And anyway, the conversation basically went, he's like, man, Cesar, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I want to live. And, I remember him being tearful. And, man, that set me on a path of some very, very heavy anxiety because, I wasn't the poster child for great mental or physical health. I had my own background and partying and, Austin is very conducive to that, to, a lifestyle of drinking and just kind of living for the day kind of stuff. And so I certainly had my own struggles with that. And so I, there was like a reckoning that was happening of like, man, I definitely got that, man, if I continue down this path, who's to say that isn't my own fate? And, I had to really look at that. I had to really look at that and do a lot of work around that.
Man. I think we got to take a break after that heaviness. I had no idea, bro. That's incredible. An incredible story. Cool. And I had no idea.
Hopefully I'm not getting too heavy on you, man. I told you this was
this is
concept
great, bro.
album.
I feel like we're going to go like 3 hours, dude. So, I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but it's a lot of ground to cover.
I'm game to go as long as you can go,
Let me, I'm going to play one more song to take us out, and then I'm just going to keep rolling, but let's just take 5 and kind of recollect.
Okay.
And I got to figure out how I'm going to come back from that.
You have come with vicious ways, and I won't leave you. Oh, but I won't stay. It serves you right. I'm fucked up to who? If love's a poison cup, pretty baby, I wanna share it with you. I was hoping that you wouldn't dare. I was hoping that you wouldn't dare, but you just don't care. Oh no, you just don't. Oh no, you just don't. Oh no, you just don't. You have come with vicious ways, and I won't leave you. Oh, but I won't stay. It serves you right. I'm fucked up to who? It loves a poison cup, but baby, we drank it through. I was hoping that you wouldn't dare. I was hoping that you wouldn't dare, but you just don't care. Oh no, you just don't. Oh no,
Well, there can be no great band without a great drummer. It's a physical fact of the universe. There are no great bands who don't have great drummers. It's just that simple. It's pretty heartbreaking when a drummer quits the band. So you've had 2 drummers in the Amps.
Yeah, Beto Rincon was he started off with me on Spectre and the Cab. He was a good friend of mine, and we worked in the restaurant biz together. And then he went and pursued some other. He had some other musical pursuits with some other bands in town, and so we had to replace him. And then it was Justin Swite, who's an old friend from friends that I had friends that I still have, that I met when I moved to Austin in 95 to 2000 was a real special time with a lot of these guys that I knew. A bunch, it's a lot of music lovers out here in this city, and Justin and I rolled with this group of friends. He played in some of the bands with these group of friends that I had. So I've always known of him as a great drummer.
So you put together Haunted Amps with Beto. You guys practice, you get all this momentum cooking up, and you're ready to rock and roll. And then he quits the band. What was that like?
I don't know, and I could be wrong, and maybe Seth is a better person to ask. I don't know if we rehearsed Saboteur songs with Beto. We may have, but if so, it was shortly thereafter those songs were starting to get fleshed out that he quit the band.
My guest today is Cesar Aguilar. He is the frontman for the Austin, Texas band Haunted Amps. And they have a Twitter handle, which is at haunted_amps. It's been a few years since it was active, because the band broke up. But there's some hilarious tweets on here. There's a great tweet chain. It goes, a quote from Jack Rabbit: "The only bands who have to worry about the internet cutting into their sales are the people who are making lousy albums. Even without the better analog sound and fine art of the vinyl era, the main event, 30 to 60 minutes of an artist's full musical expression, sequenced carefully as on total body of work, is not the concept that is dying. What's dying is the idea of only the crappiest crap, made with the crappiest of intentions, with the crappiest production, to entice the most airtime on the crappiest of giant chains of radio stations, bought and paid for by crappy labels and dictated by some crappy, contemptuous, lowest common denominator projecting programming executive from his crappy polling printouts in some crappy office somewhere to ensure we all swallow the same crap all over the country at the same crappy time, and then placing that one slice of crap on a longer disc with a bunch of even crappier crap. That is the concept that is dying."
That I read that. Now I don't remember who Jack Rabbit was, but I remember reading that, and I was like, yeah, that's why we wrote this record. That's why I'm trying to make a name for us in Austin, Texas. That's why you get a guy that doesn't know, from a technical standpoint, doesn't hold the candle to all these, these hired guns out here in this city, and tries to do something different. When I read that, it's like, this is what I felt like I was up against.
It really resonated with me. And there's a tweet before that, kind of in this time, where Amps are doing a bunch of promo, and it says major labels plus corporate radio plus a monopoly on all major venues equals shit music. Suck it, Clear Channel. Haunted Amps are taking back the airwaves. I mean, bravo, sir.
Well, yeah, man. I mean, that's kind of what, as you can tell, I was getting really jaded really quick, and I was a different person then, I mean, remember, like, we haven't been Haunted Amps for, quite a long time. The record was written a decade ago, and didn't go the way that I hoped. it's not ironic. You know what I mean? Like, the name of the record is Saboteur Lost at Sea. And some of the thinking there was, confronting self-sabotage and, being vulnerable, putting yourself out there, and in an effort to not self-sabotage anymore, still ended up self-sabotaging. Because, after losing a second drummer, you know what I mean? I took it personal. And it was emotionally draining for me and taxing. And then we had a third drummer that kind of saved the day because we had some live shows lined up, and he played with us, and he's a good friend of mine and still is. And he's actually out in Portland, not in Portland, but in Oregon. We got to save the amps and play some great shows. And then he had enough as well. What I know now is that resilience it's a real thing. You know what I mean? And I could have had a thicker skin, and I could have been more resilient, but I interpreted the situation as the cards are stacked against me, and there must be something wrong with me. This music must not be resonating with these guys enough that, they definitely see that the grass is greener somewhere else. And and that could have not been true at all. You know what I mean? But that's how I perceived it, because I had some lofty goals. And that lofty goal was to be able to produce art consistently with a band.
There's nothing worse than when you get a great drummer and you get a ton of momentum, and then the drummer leaves. It is the hardest position in the band. You can't have a great band without a great drummer. You can get by with an okay bass player as long as everybody else is, or maybe an okay guitar player, or a halfway decent steel player or something like that. But there's just nothing worse than that. And to have to face that over and over again, it's the bane of almost every band. Great drummers are not easy to find. And when you finally get one who wants to be there, who's a part of the collaborative effort, it's not like you're a James Brown and you're handing out charts and, the minute somebody misses a hi-hat beat, they get fined $20. This is it's a collective expression coming together behind a main songwriter and his vision. But Justin Swight made it onto the record. He's the one that you hear on all these incredible tracks. And we're halfway through the record at this point in the podcast, the most epic podcast ever recorded. And we're going to listen to a little more Haunted Amps. Here we go.
I was taken aback by your lack of concern. It's clear to me you haven't been burned before. So what's in store? You don't come around here anymore. And I hear that you are torn between what you are and what you hold. You just can't cope with a life, ooh, that is so die on Solitude shore, in the lighthouse that towers over like a mysterious ocean.
There's a great old blog. It's the Indie Texas blog spot. And I was digging it up, doing some research for this. And I'm going to read it because I think it's fascinating and awesome. And it goes, according to my iTunes account, I've owned Saboteur Lost at Sea, the debut album by Austin's Haunted Amps, for about a year and a half. The record mysteriously materialized one night via some strange Austin osmosis effect. During those first tentative listens, I knew that there was something special about the record, which is small part Pink Floyd, large part Nick Cave, and all parts sad, crumbling distortion. Man, beautiful choice of words there. Still, I was unable to fully fall under its spell and often dismissed the record, pledging to give it a full listen at some ambiguous later date. This was exactly my experience. I got those board mixes, I heard it, and I thought, oh, that's pretty good. But it didn't sink in, you know. It took a while, and then it hit me one day, like, my God, you know, when you really look at the totality of this record, it's fucking incredible. The blog goes on. Over time, iTunes Shuffle would resurrect the Haunted Amps. I'm So Tired, jumping out like an anxious child, Hurricane, highlighting a miserable evening. Today, the track Pink Clouds struck me squarely between the eyes, proclaiming, there's just no excuse. You are the solution. I refuse to remain at fault. Finally, I could see clearly. Saboteur Lost at Sea is an absolute classic record. It's got huge The National-esque riffs that sound like mountains falling apart, a dense, disquieting atmosphere, suitable lyrics, and a distinctive vocalist. That's the best way to describe these vocals. They're very distinctive. They're raw, they're passionate, they're in your face. You can feel them. They're just omnipresent. And the blog continues. They have this to say for themselves. We wrote an album that occurs on or near the ocean, sometimes in a vessel, about love, death, forlorn relations, peyote hallucinations, and other minor themes. Follow the buoy. Naturally, it seems that the Haunted Amps haven't performed a show since 2011. They have a whopping 53 followers on Facebook and Twitter combined, and their last tweet from April 2013 reads, went through previous tweets, was going to document our incremental rise or abysmal plummet into obscurity. Guess it was obscurity. So it goes. It's never a mark of great art how much it's consumed or how popular it is. You know, the art speaks for itself, and it's either good or it isn't. And sometimes the best art is the least popular, the least well known. So that's an old indie Texas blog spot that to me, very well written. Antonio Rodriguez, I believe, was the author of it.
Yeah, I remember him reaching out to me on social media, probably Facebook, and making me aware that he had written that. And I remember being blown away by and humbled, you know what I mean, by that reception. And in fact, where he talks about that relationship, right, of kind of being dismissive, you know, I'm okay with that, meaning that if there was enough there to hook you, to pique your curiosity and come back to it, and then have it hit you where you got the depth of what I felt I was trying to communicate, then that's a win for me. And I think that is, you know, that's, you know, kind of even my relationship with the record, you know what I mean? Where I felt like I put together with this group of men a really great record, you know, and I had a lot of hesitancy saying, hey, man, I wrote a great record, you know, it's just not, you know what I mean? I just, for fear of coming off as that cliche, right? That stereotypical, egotistical, delusions of grandeur kind of musician, I didn't want to, be a shameless self-promoter, but I did feel that we had captured something really special. And, and I still feel that way. And now, like, I don't give a fuck, meaning that, like, I don't care that, like, I know we wrote a fucking good record. Like, I know we wrote a fucking good record, and I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, if people don't think that or don't hear that, that's fine. But I hope that for those that love music and will sit with the record, and hearing you play the board mixes back, it's humbling, man, because it's really raw. You know what I mean? It doesn't have any of the finishing touches, that we put on the final record. And I could criticize myself or go into a lot of like mental self chatter and be like, I really don't. Yeah, it's hard for me to listen to that. But at this point, man, I'm like, it is what it is, and that's who I am. And that's what got recorded. Of course, you do some little bit of sprucing up, add a little reverb here, a little reverb there, and kind of give it more depth. But that's what was recorded. So that's what it is,
And out there, if anybody listened to this, there is, I believe it's on Reverb Nation. There's, places you can still find the CD that was published or printed.
It's on Bandcamp too. I think I've gotten one sale in 10 years. I don't even know how to get the money.
And this is, what I'm playing on the podcast are the very first recordings that came from Justin, the amazing, the great Justin Douglas's board mixes that were done kind of really fresh right out of the gate before you guys went in to retrack, a few vocals, a few guitar parts. And, sonically the record changed so much. The finished product that's out there that you're going to hear on Bandcamp or on the CD, that is the official finished record. But what you're hearing on this podcast are the raw emotion of the board mixes. For all you, I know there's more than a few Haunted Amp fanatics out there like myself. So, the 50 of us that are listening to this podcast, I think, there's only a couple people that have these board mixes, and I'm one of them. So.
Well, that's cool, man. And I think you're accurate. There's a good solid 50 diehards, what's interesting is this song that you played, there's a demarcating line, or a demarcation rather, and the first half of the album is comprised of, I'm So Tired, Saboteur Lost at Sea, the title track, Hurricane, and Vicious Waves. And me knowing what the album, what I was conceiving was that I'm So Tired is deliberately separated from what I consider the first three tracks, which is Saboteur, Hurricane, and Vicious Waves. And I don't want to go into the whole long-winded story about it, but basically I felt like I'm So Tired existed independently of this album and was something that was meant to set up the theme of being at the point of mental, physical, and spiritual exhaustion. In life, I had been through the meat grinder. I was trying to put my life back together, and I was tired. I was tired of kind of feeling like driftwood. That the line in that song, where I think this is an interesting story. Maybe you think so, or maybe you don't, but I want to share it with you. Is where I talk about, if I expire, I've seen everything that I need to see in the fire. Around 5 years before I wrote this record, I had someone that I was seeing that was somehow she had gotten involved with the Native American church. She was going to these ceremonies where they were doing peyote, like literally people that under the religious protection of, our Constitution were like Native American church people, and they could have their type of ceremonies. So basically, the reason I'm sharing this story is that I got to participate in 2 of these ceremonies. And part of the ceremony is you eat peyote, you know? But anyway, man, it not to divulge too much, but at some point a basket of peyote buttons came around and I swallowed a few, and I'm like, I'm just an old, like, drinker, psychedelics kind of guy at the time. And I'm like, yeah, man, I've done mushrooms, blah, 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 blah. I'll do this. Didn't know what I was getting myself into. And then, the way the ceremony goes, you're like sitting in this teepee and there's this very sacred drum that's being beat. The buttons are getting passed around. Tobacco's getting smoked. And it's funny, man, because at some point I got super thirsty and they started passing around what I thought was something to like quench your thirst. Well, it turns out that it was freaking peyote tea. And so I took a big old gulp of this peyote tea and, it didn't take long before I was like transported to another planet. And anyway, what ended up happening this is like a whole 12-hour ordeal where like you start in at sunset and then you get out of the teepee at sunrise. And there's a lot of prayer. There's a lot of tobacco being smoked. It's a very, I think it was a very formative experience for me, to be honest. The tweet about the peyote hallucinations, I mean, I was being serious, you know what I mean? Like, because what ended up happening is that as sunrise hit, I remember there was this Japanese woman, she was married to a Navajo and, they're speaking in their native tongue. She's like praying in Japanese and he's like, speaking out loud in his native tongue. And I mean, it just all culminated, man. And, there's this fire that's always burned. There's like a sacred fire that's being burned in the middle of the middle of the teepee. And anyway, basically I saw 2 images that were going to be very, foretelling, I think is the word. But one of them was like, I was looking at this fire because that's what you do. Or at least that's what I did during the whole ceremony. It's just like I was transfixed by this fire and staring at it all night. And then out of this fire, come around sunrise, I started seeing all these skulls just kind of rising out of the flames. And then it shook me, man. I shudder to think about it because I was like, oh man, what's this about? Because it had a very ominous feeling to it. And then after that, I literally saw an eagle or a phoenix, if you want. I know it's cheesy as it may sound, but I saw like an eagle in full force, like radiating, made of fire, just like radiating. And I mean, it was just so bright and so brilliant. And just was like, it was just this amazing thing that was happening in my life. And it just was a symbol of strength and the symbol of force. And that was a crazy experience for me, man, because basically that's what I was referring to. And I'm so tired is that having seen that particular vision, down the road, as I'm trying to repair my life and put the pieces all back together, it's like that, cliche as it sounds, it's like, I had to burn my life down to like recreate myself. And that image has been with me ever since. That's why that particular song leads into the next 3. Somehow what I felt with this record is that I was tapping into very universal themes, right? Of love, death, that self-critic. Like it's the saboteur lost at sea, right? I am that saboteur. I can be the source of my own failure. And sometimes I feel like I'm out in the middle of the ocean. And at that point specifically, you know what I mean? I know I felt that of like, okay, what do you do? Like, what do you do with this life? You know what I mean? It's like, you only get one. My goal, my aspiration is to not fuck it up. And that's, there's so much recommitting that needs to happen in order to do that. And that self-critic still continues. And I'm fighting it today still. But there's so much, like I've learned that, I have to be in love with the process. Like if it's about the art, then I have to stay committed to just producing the art and not be attached to the things that I was attached to back then. And that's taken some time to like grow and understand and you know what I mean? And you know, I've developed patience and have shifted my thinking to be just focus on the art, and everything else will take care of itself.
I believe the origin of sabotage and saboteur is of French origin, and it came from the workers back in the day. They would, to stop the gears of the machine that is life, they would throw their shoes into the gears to sabotage. But it's so prevailing in a nautical story sense, like the Hunt for Red October, right? We have a saboteur, people on a ship sabotaging it so it couldn't sail and it would have to stay in port, you know? And
right.
also, I mean, there's another old saying, any port in a storm, right? And, you know, when the hurricane of life hits you, you know, you better find a port. And,
Right. Well, you know, it's so funny, man. I feel like we're kind of firing this up, but if you go to one of the Saboteur lyrics, right, one thing that I wrote in there was, it's the dark passenger that rides aboard. He cries, man overboard. You know, mutiny is all he knows. Disloyalty is all he shows. Right. I'm not literally talking about in that sense of there being, in keeping with the theme, the nautical theme, which I had no intention originally to write a nautical record. Okay. It's just what happened. What I was referring to was, even then, was the self-critic, right? Of like, the dark passenger is that person in all of us that will tell you that you're not good enough, that you're not going to make it. Why are you doing this? This is pointless. Who the fuck are you trying to be? Who are you trying to impress? Right? Yeah, you've done this before. You know where this goes. You're gonna walk away from it again. You know what I mean? And it's like that. That's all of us. At least I believe that's all of us.
It's the thing that dies with the ego in that kind of peyote experience. You know,
that's
it's
right.
Almost like a sacrificial, you know, offering. And it's an intrinsic part of being human. Everybody has that voice, and you know, you can drink it away to a certain extent, you know, and you can do a lot of pharmaceutical remedies. But you know, when you really come back to center and you start thinking, it's very hard. Everybody has that voice, and at the same time, it drives you to be better. It can also ruin you. You know, it's a very slippery slope.
Bingo, man. That's it. And to your point, like I try to drown it out with both drinking and pharmaceuticals and whatever. And what you're going to come to find is that it'll work and then it won't. And at some point, you know, for me personally, I'm not speaking to anybody else's experience. I had to come to grips with that. And I had to find out, you know, like, what was I prepared to do about it? And, you know what I mean? That continues to be the journey today. You know, I'm happy to report that I feel like I'm just in a much better place.
So many artists are just shattered by the thought or possibility of putting all this energy and emotion into a record and then, you know, having play it for people, and then they go, man, this sucks. And it's a debilitating fear, which leads to creative decision making and intentions changing at the time of songwriting, to the point where, well, I don't want to take that chance. That's too far out for me. So I'm just going to stick to a nice pop song, you know, or something that could be on a Clear Channel station.
I like the way you tied that back in. Exactly. And that to me is, that's another form of death right there. Meaning that if you're asking me to compromise artistic integrity for the sake of you know, commercialism or commercial success, like, no, I don't want it. I would rather, and not to be like some self-righteous clown, but I would rather walk away, man, because it's like, what is the intention here? And my regard for music is the intention that, like, what I've always wanted is, if you listen to a Haunted Amps record, which there's only one, or experience a Haunted Amps show, my intention was for it to do what music had done for me, and is to be, you know, transported somewhere else outside of my body, and be like, I feel so alive today. We're but a tiny droplet in the big old sea. And to be fair, that's what we continue to be,
From my perspective, this album apparated out of nowhere like a ghost. It all came together in the perfect, little moment, the summer of 2010. And then it just came and it went just like a hurricane, it left us. Thank God you guys tracked this to 2-inch tape and you can still listen to it to this day, because there are many bands where they're pretty good and they practice a bunch and then they never do an album. They have all these songs, they're well rehearsed, they're even playing shows, but they don't go in, usually because of money, and actually track to tape and make an effort to capture that moment. And then it's gone forever. It just waves into the air, just floating away in the breeze, never to be heard again, except in the memories of the musicians that created it.
It's interesting, having this conversation. I recall where we were going, and I mean, not to toot our own horn, but I hope Seth would speak to the same point. But I just felt like the songs that we were creating after Saboteur, there was we were certainly developing as musicians, as songwriters, and there was some fun stuff, man, that we were writing. There were some cool things that we were doing.
Dude, this album definitely changed my world and my life, and it kind of raised the bar on, what could be accomplished in this type of environment. But it didn't do that on the first listen. I listened to it just like that Indie Texas blog. I listened to it a handful of times and just thought, oh, it's pretty good, but it wasn't epic, But then a switch flips, on that however many listens it takes, kind of like coming into a peyote trip, probably.
That's interesting. I wonder what it is, man. I wonder what the hook. Oh, well, referring to the Texas blog, I guess it was a lyric that hooked that writer Antonio, and I don't know what it was for you, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful that something switch that, flip the light switch, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, the lyrics are the most powerful part, and the music is, it's hard to tell what's a bigger force. They're sort of in a boxing match, in a yin and a yang. You're listening to Haunted Amps. My guest on the podcast, Cesar Aguilar, and we're going to keep it rolling right here on 525 Radio with another Haunted Amps song.
Grains of sand blow in the wind, and you ask, when did it all begin? Was it in the ocean after the bang? The summer sun sits behind the edge of the bay, and in its own
I think we should just keep it rolling and just listen to the last two songs. What do you think?
I mean, it's up to you, man. You know, I'm just here in your world.
Have you forgiven yourself your past? Jettisoned all your old beliefs? Can you participate in the pairs? The love, hate, war, and peace. Do you feel alive in your flesh? Connected to the fiber of your being. No more excuse. Your kinfolk are absolved. You are the solution, but you choose to remain at fault. Machine. The things I had to sacrifice in order to let myself be. There's rumors that I must remain clean in order to receive. The gift of this seems absurd when all I love dies around me. There's no evidence to suggest they passed on to eternity.
the great Haunted Amps, talking to Cesar Aguilar, the frontman for the Austin, Texas band. Recorded in the summer of 2010 in Austin, Texas, by the great Justin Douglas at Shine Studios. Man, yeah. So talk about great lyrics, right? Now ghosts surround my heart, and God is an eagle in flames. And also, you know, me and Seth had quite a discussion about one of your lyrics in this song, because for years, apparently I heard it the wrong way, and I'm hoping you can bring some clarity to this debate. Existential, and what I heard for years was flesh whole, but Seth corrected me, and he seems to think it's threshold. So what is it? I'm down to know.
That's hilarious. So you and Justin Douglas heard flesh hold or whole, and it is threshold, existential threshold.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner.
You know, it's interesting re-listening to those songs and listening to the board mixes, which is, you know, quite a surprise for me. Now, as we go through this process, and I realize that the fourth song, Vacant Port, it's like an interlude. And the first three songs, after I'm So Tired, it's me trying to capture existential despair. And then these last three songs is kind of trying to resolve that. And the whole existential threshold was, you know, after these contemplations or whatever you want, meditations, if you will, it's this idea of like, I'm walking through this door of, I don't know what life's about. It's a mystery to all of us. I don't have unique questions. We all have very similar ones. And I'm right there with you. I'm in the trenches. You know?
Well, I believe there's a famous Kierkegaard quote, who, you know, the granddaddy of existentialism. Something, I'm going to butcher it, but it's something to the effect of, if you truly want to be loathsome to God, run with the herd.
Well, yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, man, because, you know, I had an existential philosophy class when I was going to UT, and part of the syllabus was Kierkegaard and some Nietzsche. And, you know, I was just an arrogant prick thinking that if I took these classes and had these books that I knew what they were talking about, and you know, and I didn't. But I wasn't so arrogant that when I would read these books, I knew there was wisdom there that was just too hard for me to understand at that point, because I was just so young. You know what I mean? Even on Vacant Port, the line, life surpasses life. I mean, I would be disingenuous if I didn't tell you that, like, I read that somewhere, and I think I read it in a Nietzsche book. And I was just stunned by that, because I was like, yeah, like, I'm, you know, we get to this point in life where we're just like clinging on to, I just don't want to die. I just, you know, like my life is so precious. And it's like, and in that clinging on to that life is so precious, we end up not doing anything with it and not enjoying it, and not, you know, like understanding that it's not like a video game where you get extra credits and like you die and you can hit start over and you get to play again. It's like you get, like, you literally get one shot. What you do with your life is so much more important than clinging on to it. So what's the word I'm looking for here? Conventionally. And I have to do all these things and all these prescribed ways of living. And that's what I'm set out to do. And you know what I mean? That's just like, to me, it's not a life well lived. And so I was trying to communicate this idea of like, we're all afraid of death. And in that fear of death, you know, we don't make the most out of our lives. And I was certainly at that time my relationship with death was precarious at best. I didn't, you know, I always felt like there was imminent doom around the corner and I was just going to one day just collapse and die. Don't ask me why. It just was, that's just where I was. And these songs were a way for me to process that and deal with that.
Some people take it to the other end. They're adrenaline junkies. They need to face death on a daily basis in order to feel alive.
Right.
And the numbers of incredibly intelligent, wickedly smart philosophers that have grappled with this age-old existential question, for thousands of years. Just that the age-old human question. The brain needs answers. There aren't any. And what do we do? What do we do? Think about it some more.
Right. And I think that sentence right there kind of summarizes where I was at that point. It was like, the incessant, obsessive, trying to sort it all out. And I'm grateful at this point that, for better or for worse, I've given up that racket. I'm not here to sort it out for other people. I'm not going to waste my time trying to sort it out for myself. I'm just going to kind of apply an evidence-based approach and find out what works for me and what doesn't, and engage the things that work.
Bukowski had a great line about just being born into hospitals where it's cheaper to die. Born into this life where you've got to kill or be killed, and it's this. You got to go out, you got to make money, and who made it this way? Who invented this insanity?
Mm-hmm. Well, think about where we're at right now. You know what I mean? In 2020, it's in a pandemic and in a less than favorable state of affairs as a country as it relates to being in America, and you come to find out that this thing that we revere, you know what I mean, in terms of what you're supposed to do, and I'm doing that in air quotes. You're seeing it stood up on its head, and realizing the existential toll that it has, because there's something about it, not to make it all evil and wrong, but there is something sacred about being human that is not being accounted for. And trying to fit everybody into this mold is not going to work, because we're not all the same. We're not all meant to be like these industrious, well-to-do or whatever that looks like, man. It's just like to think that model would work for everybody is just having a major toll on people, is what I believe.
All around the world, as we're doing this in November of 2020, no sector has been hit harder than the hospitality, service, bars, restaurants, casinos. Vegas is, a lot of people have been forced into kind of, if they're lucky enough to still, be alive and kicking, forced into this question that maybe they didn't want to be in. And, I think it's interesting as we progress further and further into AI and into transhumanism and, the desire of a certain sect of humans to make the rest of humanity into some type of hybrid machine where, free thought, maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't, but the true human experience of just being alone with your mind, it's not going to be possible, because there's going to be a neural net, and you're going to have IoT wearables, and they're going to know what you thought before you even thought it. It's some serious PK dick.
Yeah, man. You're into sci-fi as well as I am. It's interesting that you use the word machine, because, dude, that not just to pivot back into the album, but that's why I wrote what I wrote on the last song. Is right. It's like, what kind of life is this? The life of an anxious machine. And I meant that from like existential angst, right? Like, you ask us to not look at what is going on with us internally, and just to continue to be a cog in the machine, or a spoke in the wheel, whatever analogy you want. You know what I mean? And it's like, you're not acknowledging the human underneath all that, and the experiences that they've had, the circumstances that they've had, And it's like, that's why I feel so passionate about this album, because this album was for the downtrodden. You know what I mean? For my, me being cut from that cloth of like, man, I hear you.
Unlike a lot of albums, you didn't have 10 albums before it to sort of hone your craft and practice. This just kind of, you've been in a couple of bands, but most artists, they have sort of a peak, a zenith. Some people bloom early, some people bloom late. A lot of artists start out great, and then they sort of enter into this banal, mediocre period where they're just collecting checks, and maybe they have a renaissance at the end of their career. But that's why this record is so different. It just came out of nowhere like a bolt of lightning, and then it went away as fast as it came. In terms of, there was never a follow-up. You guys disbanded sometime in the next year, and drummers, it's always the drummers. That's my
yeah I've worked through that resentment. I definitely had quite a bit of it, but to kind of keep it on the lighter side, Seth will share with you, it was nothing short of comical when we were like picking people up off of Craigslist, and this one guy came in, man, and it was just like, there was no way this guy was gonna work. He was in some cover band called More Cowbell, based off of that Saturday Night Live skit. You know what I'm saying? And
oh, go on. I'm intrigued.
Oh God, dude, this is such a funny story. And he's in there, and rather than play our songs, he wants to jam, right? And he's definitely more of the kind of funk, variety of drummer. You know what I mean? Certainly not anybody that needed to be doing anything related to haunted amps. And at some point we're like jamming, and I'm just like kind of indulging the situation. And at some point the dude goes into a rim shot, and then he like points with his drumstick, points at Seth like, bass solo. And God, dude, it was at that point I was like, I'm fucking done, man. I'm done. And I think Seth, I think that he attempted to play a bass solo. And
it sounds like Seth. I mean, who wouldn't? You've been challenged by the drummer to a bass solo.
Dude, it's so gnarly, man. It was so gnarly, and just so like, this is exactly what I don't want to be doing,
And that's you got two choices. You can either, perform, or you can, I'm cool.
Yeah.
Just do it, but it's hard to know in the moment. Hindsight's always easier. I'm really curious, like, how many auditions did you guys do? I mean, how many of these stories are there?
Oh, we did a few. There was another guy that came in, and I felt like I got catfished by this guy, because, we hopped on the phone and we started talking about jazz music, and he started talking about Coltrane, and I was like, cool, man. I feel like if it's a jazzer that has this kind of avant-garde, art rock kind of vibe to him, then this would be great. You know what I mean? And he showed up, and the dude was atrocious. He was atrocious. Like, we were like, okay, so here's, we would play a song, and I would wait for him to kick into the rhythm, and I'd be like, at one point I think I looked at him and I was like, do you hear it, man? Can you imagine what the beat is here? And he was like, yeah, man, I'm just warming up. And not that I wasn't an amateur, but I mean, you could sense that he did drumming or he was a drummer as a hobby, not someone that had, at least from my perspective, had played to a song. And I was like, God, you know what I'm saying? These are the things that after a while, you're like, what is going on here? And then I had a friend that I worked with in the restaurants. He came through, and it was a very similar situation where he said, yeah, I can do it. And then he got to playing, and it's like, no, he clearly couldn't.
And To be fair, because I've been on both sides of this audition nightmare, but the auditioning for Haunted Amps, that's not your average drumming gig. I mean, you need to be a very special caliber of drummer. I mean, if you're in a country band and you're playing Merle Haggard, Johnny Cash, really just polka, something easy, where the drums aren't really the center fixture. They're certainly not, interweaving with other instruments. They're just kind of holding the beat down in a very basic manner. But to audition for the amps, man, that's like, you better have something that you're bringing to the table more than just a kick and a snare. You got to be a different level of drummer. But I mean, I've been the guy on the audition and sucking, and I've been on the other side of it, going, God, these guys suck. We're never going to find anybody. I auditioned in Portland in the '90s. It was like a Primus kind of band that I was really in love with. I thought, oh my God, that was the best audition I've ever had, and man, we gelled so well together. And I'm finally going to be in a band where I can kind of let it go a little bit. And I never even got a call back. It was very.
Well, man, here's the thing. I appreciate you saying what you're saying. I think, I don't know. I mean, maybe people, it could be the way I carried myself. At that point I was really serious about the music. And, I think for somebody that was novice, did have very clear idea, or somewhat clear idea of what I wanted the band to sound like, and how it needed to gel, and then maybe I mean, you had to have liked the kind of music that we liked, and you had to have got the concept of the kind of music that we were writing for it to work. Otherwise, you would think that, oh man, this is just some noisy band.
Is Kurt Weill the last hope for musical integrity? Like, when Kurt Weill does a Pepsi commercial, it's going to be over for me. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
That's, I was going to ask you, did he do a Pepsi commercial? But I get what you're saying, meaning
not yet.
Meaning that if he does, then, here's the thing, man. It's, I recently read, not recently, maybe a year ago or two, whenever Jeff Tweedy from Wilco wrote an autobiography, I read it, and I remember him in the book. He talked about, refusing to do commercials. And then his dad, who was like a salt of the earth guy, I think he might have worked in the railroad or something, was like, called him out for his arrogance. And he's like, who do you think you are? You know what I mean? It's like, people are willing to give you money to sell their product. And where you came from, and what we've gone through. And you think you have this luxury to just, refuse money. And, as I heard that story, and I think he ended up, selling several songs or licensing several songs to
Volkswagen.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yes, very famously.
Yeah. And you know what I mean? It's like, so what I'm getting at is like, dude, people are going to do what they're going to do. You know what I mean? And
have you seen the Post Malone Doritos commercial?
Yep. I'm sure I have.
Post Limon.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's like as bad as it gets right there. I mean, sorry. That's my opinion. But
somebody online, I read this, they're like, if you're an artist and that you're an artist, you need to, if you're truly dedicated to the art, you need to figure out a way to do your art while you are gainfully employed. Otherwise, you're going to starve to death. And I hate to be pragmatic, in my older age, but there's a discipline there, right? It's like, meaning that if I'm not applying my extra hours that I have to making art, then it's on nobody else but me, because I have the time. It's really, do I have the discipline? And, that's what I challenge myself with now, is do I truly have the discipline to be dedicated to the art to the point where while I'm working, I put as much time as I have to the art as I can. And if it's meant to be, meaning if at some point, the art that I produce, happens to be the way that I sustain my life, then great. If it doesn't, well, then if I truly cared about the art, then I would just continue to make the art.
There should be a movie where people rob banks to finance an art career. Maybe that could be. I mean, it's easy for me to sit here in my high and mighty moral smug attitude. I mean, there's no Pepsi deals staring me in the face. They're easy to turn down when you don't have them.
Right.
When he comes along and says, "Hey, we got $50 million for you," maybe the choice gets a little harder, And like Willie Nelson in the 90s, he got in trouble with the IRS. The IRS took like $22 million. There's a very famous Bill Hicks bit about Willie Nelson and how he's at the time it was 92 or whatever. He's the one guy that gets a pass for doing commercials because the IRS just, railroaded him so hard. And so now he's poor Willie. Hicks was trying to start a Save Willie campaign where, can't bear to see him on these Taco Bell commercials.
Yeah, Save Willie. And that's why I bring up the Tweety thing that I read. It's like, you know what? It's like, he had a reckoning with himself. He got insight from, the person that brought him onto this planet, his dad in that case, and he made a choice. And the choice was informed by, call it wisdom, insight that his dad provided, and that was his choice. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's his choice. Would I make the same choice? I don't know. I'm like, to your point, I'm not in that position. So it's not even something that I need to worry about. But it lent me a different perspective. The part of the arrogance piece, right? I was like, it lent me a different perspective to like, okay, you don't know shit, and you don't know what you would do in that situation, and you're not even in that situation. So what does it matter?
I think it's fair to say, like, nobody sheds a tear when Britney Spears does a Pepsi commercial. It's almost expected. It's the real heartbreakers are the guys that seem to have this integrity, this artistic integrity, who get into a position for whatever reason, into a point in time where now they've got to do the deal.
Yeah. It's like you got to pay for that extravagant lifestyle. You want to have that personal chef and those. 50,000 square foot house doesn't pay for itself.
And, I mean, no band is the bigger embodiment of this whole conversation than Metallica, right? When Metallica started that, love them or hate them, you can not be a fan or be a fan either way. They were just these beer drinking kids that, were just so committed and driven to playing the metal, and that's all they cared about. And I mean, you see them today as old men. They've got life coaches and massage therapists, and everybody's had like knee surgery. And the entourage is just mind blowing around those guys. Well,
what's funny? I feel like there is going to be some kind of Metallica renaissance, because this is hilarious, man. In the last month, I had a conversation with my better half about how One is one of the greatest Metallica songs, or one of the greatest songs ever written.
Agreed.
And then, my brother-in-law, he posted something on social media about One being one of the greatest songs ever written. A friend of mine did it recently as well. You're bringing up Metallica on this conversation. It's like, when I hear these things, man, it's like the universe, I feel. I try to stay tuned into stuff like that. I'm like, is there something either great or not so great that's going to happen with Metallica soon? It kind of feels like it's in the air, so to speak.
Go back and watch live Cliff Burton Metallica. I mean, Cliff Burton was a fucking god. That guy was amazing. I mean, you cannot go watch old live Cliff Burton Metallica footage without just being in amazement at how awesome Cliff Burton was on stage. I mean, the guy was a thunder god.
Thunder god, that's awesome. Yeah, dude, agreed, 100%, man. Like all those early records are. I mean, yeah, it's crazy to think that they were being written in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a very specific type of metal that I loved growing up.
If you're a boomer like us, then
dude.
You had Metallica on tape, and this was, there's 3 television stations, and the radio was everything. Well, dude, I I mean, I think I don't know. We should if I go more than 3 hours, I have to stop and download and save it because
let's land this plane, man. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, man, and I hope that you got a good interview out of it.
My guest today, Cesar Aguilar, frontman for the legendary Austin band Haunted Amps. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Any plugs you want to give out? Any shout outs? Any kind of last closing words?
No, I mean, I again, just, I want to thank you for, being a fan of the record and having me on and doing this. And, the only thing I'll say is that I've always have felt, it's kind of funny the way the record ended, but I've always felt like it was going to always be to be continued. And, that's where I'm at now. Where I'm at now is, how do I continue to do what I love? And that's make music.
Imagine if you guys never went in and recorded to 2-inch tape, like it wouldn't even be here, nobody would be able to hear it. It would be a tragic waste. So many bands end up like that, and it's heartbreaking. But the Haunted Amps is not one of them, thank God. So yeah, check it out. Saboteur Lost at Sea, Haunted Amps. It'll change your life if you let it. Cesar, it's been my pleasure to have you on the 525 Records podcast today. Thank you very much. Until next time, take care, buddy.
All right, brother. Thank you.
that you were